This episode of the Helping Healing Humor podcast is brought to you by Howell Wealth Management. On the Helping Healing Humor podcast, we talk about anxiety and stress and its impact on our everyday lives. We know that finances, including planning for retirement, is one of the leading causes of stress. It can be confusing and overwhelming. There are differing opinions on the best approach. It can be hard to know who to trust. For our retirement planning, Whitney and I trust Greg Howell of Howell Wealth Management at Northwestern Mutual. Greg is professional, knowledgeable, and accessible. He looks at the whole picture and thinks outside the box to create ways to help you reach your financial goals. Retirement planning can be especially challenging for ministers who do not have the benefit of a 401k, but Greg's expertise and creativity can get you on the right path and give you confidence for the future. Text him to schedule your free 15-minute consultation today at 931-638-1576. Be sure to tell him Ben and Travis sent you. Welcome into the Helping Healing Humor podcast with Ben and Travis. It's good to be back again here at Mars Hill Bible School. Just wrapped up the Batify Freedom 5K, and it was wonderful. Wet. It was wonderful. Just want to jump on and talk a little bit about accountability partners. We were at Maywood a couple of weeks ago, and we had a few things submitted. We had question and answer there at camp, and we thought we might spend a little more time answering a couple of those questions, a couple of things that were mentioned throughout the week here on the podcast. I think this one was actually maybe brought to us personally as something to do. And so,
well, I think we answered and used this thought. I think we talked about having someone who will hold you accountable, having some partner that will help you, and somebody wanted to know a little bit more about that. Like, how does that work? So that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to bring you a little bit about how you make that work.
Yes. So I would consider Ben an accountability partner for me, and we got Will Myhan, who's on the show, and Blake Hollam, and I've got quite a few of those that we have a group text, and we can always, and we've mentioned that before, text and say, hey, this is kind of what I'm going through, here's the headspace, here's what I'm thinking. Sometimes we just text when we're mad at the world, and we want to voice that to someone that we know is not going to blast it to the United Nations. Not that they would do anything about it anyways, but we just want to do that. And so instead of blasting on social media, saves us some strife on there, we just text each other, and there's very little judgment on there. But I know who those guys are, and I know that they understand what I'm thinking is not right. They know that I know that what I'm thinking is not right, but it helps to have someone that you can go to when you need a little help. So we're going to talk a little bit about, I think we've got three things that probably overlap a good bit. What makes a good accountability partner. We're not saying by any means that we are excellent at this, but these are kind of things that we shoot for each other.
Yeah.
And so if you go into this thinking, I'm going to be this for someone else, that's kind of what we're looking for. And, if you're for somebody else that way, a lot of times they're going to turn around and return the favor.
Yeah.
So it's always about putting the what can I do to be the best whatever in this situation. And today, it's accountability partners.
Yeah, one of the first things that I thought about with that is you really want to look for somebody who is invested. You want to find somebody who is invested in you. A lot of people who are struggling with alcohol or drugs or other things, there's a lot of these anonymous groups, Alcoholics Anonymous. You've got actual Sexual Addicts Anonymous. You've got the narcotics. You got a lot of the different things that people are a part of. And one of the main things in that is having a sponsor, which is your accountability. So if you struggle with something, having someone who number one you can call, like Travis has already talked about, who's invested enough that if you call them, they're going to answer. If you text them, they're going to read it, they're going to answer, they're going to send you something back and encourage you, encouraging words. But also they're invested in seeing you do the best you can do, and they're gonna talk to you about it. They're going to ask you about it. Even if you don't call them, they're invested enough that they're going to kind of come back to you about it. So there's somebody who's connected with you, invested with you, and wanting to see you go the right direction. And that may be a good personal close friend, that may be a minister, that might be.
And so their values
Yeah.
line up. If you want, if you're a Christian, you want Christian values, you want a Christian outcome. You're trying to get to the finish line, whatever that may be look like incrementally, but ultimately the eternal finish line that Jesus is at. And so you want those values to line up. If you got somebody who thinks what you're struggling with isn't bad or wrong or not the desired outcome, that's going to make it difficult because they're not going to see what's the problem here. I don't have an issue with that. So I would say investment includes what do they value, and those need to line up. Although maybe a spouse isn't the best at some level.
Yeah, generally speaking, I try to encourage people in the counseling world not to make their spouse their accountability person, because, and that may seem crazy, it depends on what it is.
Yeah.
But what ends up happening is, and certainly you want to have an open relationship where you can talk with your spouse and all that. So we're not disagreeing there. But let's just say as an adult, you're struggling with porn, or you're struggling with even extramarital affairs, or things along that line that have happened. You want somebody that's not your spouse, so that there's not a parent-like role there, and it's going to continue to hurt the relationship.
We're not talking about hiding things from your spouse at all, but it's someone that you can go to, share what's going on, share what you're going through, and it's not going to maybe destroy them or set them up in a parent role, kind of like what you're saying.
And with the accountability, it sometimes maybe when you've messed up, but a lot of times it's when you are trying not to. You're in the process of, the temptation is starting to be there, and you need somebody to go talk to eliminate it. It would be easier if you were going to talk to a trusted friend. They may not all believe the exact same way you do, but they need to be invested in what you believe. Mm-hmm. So if Travis, let's say, doesn't think it's a big deal for me to struggle with some particular thing, he needs to know it's a big deal to me. Mm-hmm. And if he's willing to be invested enough in me that it doesn't matter that he agrees or not. As a counselor, that should be the way that I approach things. A lot of people talk about, I don't want to go to a counselor that's not a Christian because they're going to try to steer me away from XYZ. And my comment to them usually is they shouldn't. Mm-hmm. If they're a counselor that's worth they have their worth, they're not going to.
And it can work the other way as well.
That's right. But I don't steer people. I don't try to steer people necessarily towards Christianity if they don't want that. That's not their goal.
Your values are those.
Yeah, that's my values, but it's not theirs. And if they allow that and want that, then yes. And so, I have a duty to help them where they are get to where they want to be. If that makes sense.
And a lot of times, if you help them, they're going to be open to the other possibilities.
That's true.
Why do you feel this way?
Yeah.
Why are you doing the things you do?
That's true.
And so that's always an interesting thing. I'm sure that can be difficult to balance.
Yeah, you just try not to push your own beliefs on somebody.
Yes.
So that's kind of the first thing.
Yeah. So the second we've got is to be assertive, to be what people need. So when I come to Ben, say in that text group, I generally know what I'm going to get. And if you're like me, I'm a person who loves sermons. I like sermons that step on my toes. I like to be challenged. But there are certain people that I go to knowing that I'm going to get challenged on what I'm thinking. And then there are some people I go to that maybe they're not that vain. And so being assertive and knowing that relationship and what's necessary.
Yeah, when I talk to people, couples and others about communication, assertiveness is something that comes up, and it's honestly one of the biggest struggles that I've probably had through the years is being assertive, saying what I need to say, because we generally either kind of push it down and don't say it, and then it builds up inside us and it frustrates us. This is when we're having conflict with somebody. So we either don't say it or we end up being really pushy and aggressive. So you want somebody in accountability who is going to say what you need what they need to say to you to help you, but you don't want somebody who's going to be aggressive with you and hurtful. You want somebody who's going to be encouraging. I can tell Travis to take out the trash in a really irritating, frustrating, mean kind of way, or I could gently encourage him to do so. There's different ways of saying things, and assertive is, I need you to do this because. Versus, you don't ever do this. Why don't you ever take out the trash? So there's a difference in the way I say it, and so you want to look for somebody who can encourage you, be assertive, and say, "Hey, you really need to do this because, hey, this is what And you got to be open to that because, today's world, if somebody says, "Hey, you shouldn't be doing this," somebody goes, "Well, quit judging me."
Is there a place in this to be passive aggressive? Or is it?
I think the passive aggressive falls into what we don't want.
Okay,
then, when you're passive,
I want to cover that.
Yeah. I mean, when you're passive aggressive, what happens is you don't say it until it just builds up so much that you end up blowing up somebody.
And I think that's the way to keep from being.
Yeah,
I want to say too assertive. That's not really assertiveness.
Yeah,
but you can get to that point where it builds up, and then boom,
then you're aggressive.
Somebody, and then there's. You have so many things that they've got to get right that they feel overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And so if you're going along the path and when things come up, you handle it right then.
You try to handle it then. You try to talk to them then. You say, hey, I'm worried about this. What can I do to help you with it? And so pushing people in the right direction and for the right things. And, I can tell Travis sometimes texts us stuff, but I say, get off social media, man. He sometimes social media is frustrating, and I know when things happen, I just stay off of it for a little while. I know if some major events happened, it's just going to be a political firestorm, and Travis will text frustrated about it, and I just go, get off social media.
Stop it.
That's the key right now, and so that's kind of a funny thing, but that's kind of the way you deal with it too. Is you see somebody doing something that's detrimental, you go, hey, I'm worried about that. You need somebody in an accountability partner who's going to do that.
And on the social media thing, it plays off the things you look at. So like the things that you linger on, which is typically the things that we disagree with, they're just going to infiltrate your timeline more with that. And so social media is like maybe the definition of passive aggressive. I'm going to throw this thing out here and not really directed at anyone. So then it's directed at everyone.
And then most people's comments are passive aggressive.
Yes. Yeah. And there is no sarcasm font. I wish they would come up with that. Actually, it's best that they don't. Which leads us right to the last point of being compassionate.
Yeah.
Understanding to some degree where people are coming from.
Yeah.
And trying to understand where they're coming from and what they're dealing with. And it might not be a big deal to you. It may not be a struggle to you, but also understanding how it might be for the person you're trying to help.
Yeah, I go back to Romans 12 again that I mentioned, I think in the last podcast was, as much as lies with you, live at peace with all people. Don't be overcome with evil, but overcome evil with good. So we run into all sorts of things that sometimes are a struggle, and you want somebody who's not going to throw their hands up and go, you're not going to be able to do this and walk away. You want somebody that's compassionate, that, every time that you fail, they're there to kind of help pick you up and care for you. You look at the example of Jesus. Our King gave us the best example of both assertiveness, telling people what they need and what they need to do, and compassion. You look at the woman at the well in John chapter 4, and you've got this Jesus who's sitting there and is pretty assertive with her about what her relationships were like and what she needed to do. But when everybody else was ignoring this woman, Jesus had compassion on her. And he, love people where they are, love them enough not to leave them there. We've used that tagline a couple of times. But, you're loving these people where they are in their struggles and in their shortcomings, because at some point you may need that. At some point, you may need the person, and I think we all do on some level. But you don't want to leave them where they're at. You want to try to encourage them and bring them to where they need to be.
To that point, most of these things are long-term processes. It's not going to be an overnight fix. And I think to some degree, that's where people in general, the church, individuals, sometimes we fall short. We want to we want you to be a Christian. Like, get to be a Christian, and then it's okay. Now I'll go figure this out. And really, accountability partnership is discipleship.
Yeah,
and we really all need that. Even if especially if I'm brand new in Christ, I need help. I need an accountability partner, and I think we live in such an individualistic society. It's none of your business, and then it's too far gone, and we're like, how did this happen? Well, you just didn't tell anybody, or you haven't opened us, or we haven't made ourselves available to be an accountability partner, or a discipleship, or a mentor, or whatever you want to call it, pastor, elder, shepherd.
And along with this, we said you don't necessarily want this to be a spouse, but you want to have this kind of relationship with your spouse. You want it to be open.
Yes.
And when there are things
what keeps
that are
it
going on
from getting to
that's right.
The point where it's out of control.
You're open with
them. They got to go see you. They gotta come see you.
You're invested that's what made me think of that, is so many people who show up at my door for counseling, it's because they've let it get too far. And when people show up before it's gotten to that, I'm like praising them all day long, because so many times you've gotten to a point where it's not unchangeable, or it's not past the point of no return, but it's just it's a struggle, because they've not invested in one another. They've not really been assertive when there was a problem and said, this is what I need, this is why I need it, and they haven't been compassionate with each other. And so those three things also bleed into the family life too.
So the Staying Alive Disco Dodgeball Tournament question of the day. Ben, we do a lot of Fun Sing, and we have just recently added a page to our website that has
go check that
videos and lyrics to Fun Sing songs that we've been asked to do for years. And we finally did it, and it's blowing up. So, if you have a need for Fun Sing, VBS songs, the lyrics, the hand motions, all that stuff, it's on benandtravis.com/funsing, all one word. So, Ben.
Yes.
Out of all the Fun Sing songs that we have sang, which one is your favorite Fun Sing song to do?
It's maybe impossible.
Yeah. Why don't you give us a couple? I'll go with mine. I really am one that has actually shown up a lot in my life when I need it the most, is With Christ as My Vessel, I Can Smile at the Storm. And I sang that quite a bit when Haley and Daniel first showed up at our doorstep. And then, of course, the consequent, the leukemia journey. And so that's one I've really gone back to time and time again. I love singing it. I love reminding people. It probably reminds me a little bit of the hymn we used to sing, I was sinking deep in sin, but love lifted me. So there's kind of some connections there to the storm and things that go in life. But I really enjoy that one. It's probably my favorite.
I was going to say
the
that
religious
was one of those. Yeah,
VBS type songs. The Fun Sing, and I'm not going to mention the one that everybody wants us to do, but we can't do at camp.
Yeah.
Not going to mention that one. Trying to let that die, although I just brought up probably and made more.
Somebody's going to go,
no, what are you going to tell us? Yeah. Even better. But I like, as far as just being just goofy, I'm going to go the Milk song.
The Milk song's great.
I mean, that's almost borderline of the other song.
Yeah.
Which is funny, because the Milk song years ago would not have been a big deal because everybody was farming and doing that sort of thing. But now it's like you do the little hand motion and people are like, they think that's hilarious. But
Milking the Cow.
Those would be my two right now. And like I said, we stand up in front of people and do them all the time. And it's just amazing the look on the crowd. Because some of them are like right there with us.
Yeah.
Some of them are just doing the hand motions.
Like,
some of them are singing the songs.
Yeah.
And some of them are just in stunned amazement that they're these two 40-year-old dudes. Dr. Alan Baggett, who's a friend of the podcast, he said, I know people our age who have that energy, but most of them are on drugs. So I can say that I'm off the chemotherapy, and I am not on any drugs for doing these fun sing songs. So Ben, have you had a chance to think about?
Yeah, I mean, you got a couple of them I really like. With Christ as My Vessel, that's one of my favorites to do, just because of the motions and stuff, and the leaving the words out. I really like that one. I really love the song. It's kind of religious nature one, and it would probably be a toss up between Christ as My Vessel. It's Me. It's me that makes community.
Yes, we should have sang that on the last podcast.
It's me that makes community. It's you that makes the dream come true. It's Jesus, us along with Jesus. And so, you got all those together and you do the motions. So that one's on there. If you don't know that one, it's you can go to the benandtravis.com/funsing, all one word, and find that one. Probably one of the fan favorites that I get a lot of people asking about. That we haven't written any of these, by the way.
No.
So these are not ours. Don't know who they are
of any of these.
But when we do them, one of the ones that people really love is Pharaoh.
Oh, that's the one. It's at the top of the page.
Yeah,
we always get asked, what are the words? What are the hand motions? And so it's right there at the top. I keep moving it to the top every time I add
And if
one.
I don't know what you put, but if you ask JJ Davenport, it's obey me, let my people go.
Gotcha.
But everybody sings it, oh baby, let my people go.
Well,
I don't know what you did.
I'm going to quote the band Cake when somebody chanted Freebird. And it says, they said, as long as I'm on the stage, I'm a little taller than a clown. So I will not do Freebird. So when we're on stage, we're a little taller than clowns. Just a little, because we're basically clowns. But we got a little more self-respect. So when we're leading it, that's exactly how
we're going to lead it how it goes. That's right.
Sorry, JJ.
Sorry, JJ. So I didn't know what you put on there. But that's probably the one. And if it was non-religious, of course, probably one of the very first ones we ever did would be Little Cabin in the Woods.
Yeah.
So we've, those
the
are
funny
some
thing,
of my
how many
favorites.
times have we sang those songs? And they'll always be the original person to lead them song.
Mm-hmm.
So we're basically just cover band of
That's
everything.
Right. Yeah.
Little Cabin in the Woods, first person I ever saw do it was Taylor, Perry Taylor.
Perry Taylor, yeah.
And so every time we lead it, I expect Perry Taylor to walk up and be the one leading it. And so, oh boy, I feel great. That's a Wiley Dean forever. I'm sure he didn't create it. In fact, I think we talked about how he didn't create it, but I think he added the jump. Which anybody that knows Wiley knows that's exactly Wiley. So, it's all things, like I said, we can't take credit for any of them, but we've enjoyed doing them, and hopefully we've encouraged, I know that it has encouraged me in my times of trouble. So appreciate you guys. Hopefully that helps the person who submitted that question about accountability partners, and we just hope you have a blessed week, and we'll talk at you soon.
Thanks for being with us for this episode of the Helping Healing Humor podcast. Be sure to download our free ebook, 28 Days of Focused Living, at benandtravis.com and receive all of our Helping Healing and Humor extra content directly in your inbox. We look forward to having you join us at the same Ben and Travis time, same Ben and Travis channel.